Hello and welcome to the 2026 Annual Conference and Book Fair in Baltimore, Maryland. I'm Travis Kurowski, a member of the AWP Board of Directors and a member of AWP. But I'm a reader first, and I'm a big fan of Nightboat books. Brian Blanchfield's 2016 Nightboat book, Proxies, changed the way I think about, changed the way I think about writing and knowing anything. More recently, my daughter brought home Nightboat's re-release of Larry Mitchell and Ned Asta's genre-exploding 1977 queer classic, which she eventually let me borrow. The Association of Writers and Writing Programs is a small but mighty nonprofit organization that amplifies the voices of writers and the academic programs and organizations that serve writers, all while championing diversity and excellence in creative writing. I'm the chair of AWP's board of directors, but first and foremost, I'm a member of AWP. I've been a member since graduate school in Mississippi and have provided membership to my students since I became a professor in 2009. But it was not until I began serving on the board of directors I understood just how small in number and absolutely dedicated are the AWP staff. It is honestly continually inspiring, and on top of our member community like this and events like this, it's their work that keeps me volunteering my time and donating monthly to AWP to keep conference and support for writers affordable and accessible. We invite you to become a member today if you're not already. We are delighted to bring you this event today. I'd like to acknowledge and thank Nightboat Books, the great Nightboat Books, for today's event and their support of the conference. Our literary partners and sponsors allow AWP to present these extraordinary literary events and help us keep our conference accessible for everyone. I have just two reminders before the event. Respect seats marked as reserved for attendees with accessibility needs. Please give the authors about 10 minutes after the presentation to get to the book signing table down the hall there before approaching them to have your book signed, which I hope you do. Thank you. And now it's my great pleasure and honor to welcome Stephen Motika, who will introduce this fantastic event.
Thank you, Travis. Thank you to AWP. Thanks to all of you for being here, and thanks to our readers. I'm Stephen, the director of Nightboat Books. It's an honor to welcome you to a reading featuring Aurora Mattia, Imogen Smith, Miranda Mellis, and Mónica De La Torre. Nightboat has long been committed to innovative, experimental writing, work that has been at the forefront of helping to broaden the definitions of defined genre and rethink what fiction, poetry, and nonfiction are. Since our first book, a hybrid prose work by Fanny Howe, we have published classic texts of hybridity by writers such as Caroline Bergfall, Alison Cobb, and Banu Kapil. This afternoon, you'll hear from four authors who wrestle with the containers of form, stretching language to new possibilities. Aurora Mattia's exciting and enlivening novel, The Fifth Wound, includes his images, lyrics, texts, poetry in Chinese, and translations from Chinese, in a work that's a theology and a testimonial as much as a traditional novel. Imogen Smith's striking new book, Raw and Zero, concretizes the pages of the folio in her take on the pastoral in visual poems that reach to new ecos. Miranda Mellis constantly invents and blends forms, her prose work dancing between fiction and nonfiction, engaging the history of thought and the philosophy of ideas in book-length works that break the boundaries of one formal identity. And Mónica De La Torre started her writing career in Spanish, and translation between languages and between cultures is at the heart of her poetry and poetics, a bottomless creative endeavor in process, creation, and imagination. Each of these authors will read for 15 minutes from their own work, as well as share a few pieces by writers who have influenced the way they write. I'll introduce them each before they read. First will be Aurora Mattia, who was born in Hong Kong and has lived most of her life in Texas, where her mother was born. She is the author of two books from Nightboat, The Fifth Wound, and a collection of stories, interviews, and other imaginations on Sex Me Here, which we published last year. Her pieces have appeared in various magazines and in new genre spaces, including the RISD Museum and the Renaissance Society at Chicago. She's working on a new novel called 7-11, which you can look for in 2028. Please welcome Aurora Mattia.
Hi. So I'm going to read a little bit from my new book that is 85% done and is coming out in spring of 2028. I started collecting cassettes a few years ago and have like a really like tricked out cassette deck type situation. So this is going to be a character who's listening to a cassette by a country musician and then one song by that country musician that I wrote the lyrics to. Pepper Malafata was seated in front of her window, whose height and width were filled with the rusted, ruddy leaves of a maple tree. Her blood pulsed in her ears. She tried to slow the rotational velocity of her mind in order to match the tilt of the world, but it was no use. That was how it was. It was happening right in front of her, but somehow she always missed it. You could see the trees, but you couldn't see the autumn happening, couldn't observe the blush of rust ruffling infinitesimally across a single leaf, across canopies of green. Could only feel it pass over you on its way to somewhere else. By the time you saw it, it had already happened. Death spring. It was something like a passion, watching the swaying, attenuating branches hidden within leaves whose terminal splendor could not admit her into its temporal atmosphere. Its depths of hue and shadow, of curling stave and vaulted tunnel, a passion that a woman had to walk alone. There could be no man, no other woman. There was only the window with the white shutters, water falling from the ceiling to the wainscot, only the frozen pane of glass, only the woman on one side and autumn on the other. Autumn pressed itself against the pane of glass, dying of life, and a woman breathed sharply, as if she were wearing a corset. She was uncertain which of them was in the terrarium. Sometimes the world felt further away than memory. Autumn was once again an endangered species. Pepper turned to the side, looking down into her desk drawer lined with cassettes, each with a title written in blue ink in Pepper's own hand. She lifted one out, titled Connie Sweetly, Buda, Texas, May 5th, 2023. And clicked it into place in the enormous silver Pioneer CT-F900 cassette deck, to which Pepper had, humbly, annexed half her desk. The face of the machine was gleaming and opaque, populated by mysterious ports, dials, and rows of silver rectangular buttons, whose various functions were indicated by tiny diagrams of language, laser printed onto the surface in a Wayland-Yutani caps font. Set into this facade, behind a panel of glass, one more portal between dimensions, was a thin honeycomb mesh of stainless steel, 50 microns thick and overlaid with an even thinner film of transparent oxide coated in phosphor, which, when bombarded at high speed by coolly burning throngs of electrons emitted continuously in a cathode stream, fluoresced, effused a concentrated icy blue glow in the shape of a number, which shifted into the shape of another and another, representing time, measured in seconds, which corresponded to a distance of tape on the internal highway of the cassette. Time moved in folds and loops. Time was blue and somewhere else. The tape bay of the CT-F900 was unique. Rather than concealing the cassette within a windowed well, the so-called compartment door, the cassette was left exposed, hitched to the face of the machine, exhibiting an unnatural and almost uncanny grace, like a butterfly pinned upon a display case, if butterflies had been imagined by computers rather than by deep time or God. Like the guardian of a temple, the Xeno butterfly was lit from behind by a warm golden glow effused from the machine's core through a small window. You cannot count the miles until you feel them. Pepper watched the sprockets begin to spin and steadily unspool the toothed reels. As the deck took up the tape, interpreting its surface, a faint and grainy whistle fizzled from the Wharfdale W60 speakers, whose twin tweed screens, woven from a fine and blurrily sheer mesh, were framed and set into rectangular prisms of walnut veneered plywood, rising like miniature confession booths on either side of her desk. And then starts to play, and then this is one of the country songs that I wrote for this book. Wrote it a few weeks ago. None to blame for broken tooth, retching gut, or whistling lung. Freedom's just a debt delayed, first the whiskey, then the speed. Trouble everywhere I turn, dreamless sleep and sleepless dreams. Stumble up and out the door, can't take my mattress anymore. Only cure is break of day, morning doves, and gasoline. Highway take me where I'm bound, bullet put me in the ground. Cursing God ain't worth the breath, cursing you ain't worth the mess. Thought I knew a thing or two, gambled it all on a guess. Pistol spinning in my grip, laughing like an outlaw clown. 40 ounces, 40 more, 40 grams and 40 nights. Keep it gunning to the west. Try again another town. Come on, play us one more, son. Once I sing it, it's been sung. Beg for what? A bag of weed? A goodnight kiss? A noble steed? Give me everything I need, and I'll still ask for more. So that's from that. And then I'm going to read, thank you. Now I'm going to read the beginning, the first page and a half of my book, The Fifth Wound, that came out in 2023, which has been described by my publisher as an automythography. Something like autofiction, but not quite. Okay. Call me Aurora, or call me Silicone Angel, but you have to promise not to fall in love with me. If this is a testament, it is not good news. Instead of revelation, I give reverb. I am no longer the author of private letters for the eyes of one man who long ago walked along a dry, dusty path and out of sight. I can call him one man, or I can call him that fairy who long ago turned his attention to pomegranates and the rustling of doves and away from my howls. Extravagant or withering, or just plain moon and cactus, it didn't matter to him. To him, it was all just the sound of a dream, gauzy and green as if we were twining one another's ribs with lilacs, incompatible with what he called waking. Really, I wanted making phrases to be a way of making love, wanted words to be organic matter, as vital and irreducible as come, wanted dreams to be fluids coaxed and shot forth from the slime of the slick pink glands where our bodies store and distill their harsh and primordial nectars, involuntary honey, every cellar, every nook and alcove empty in its season, bubbling, spilling, easy breezy, effortless surfeit of wet and unknown folds. But I was only prepared to sing about the beauty of things, not the way beauty was streaked with hate like meat with blood. I mean, I only wrote about butterflies and nameless gods. I wrote the dream of a chaste sleepwalker soon to be woken by the lips of a fey and mysterious prince. But were I telling that particular story again now, I would write instead, quote, the dream of a chaste sleepwalker soon to be woken by the lips of a fey and mysterious prince, who all along had been feeding me tiny wafers of colorful crystal at the suggestion of a spindly, sylvan, moss-draped hag, and or pixelated clone of Artemis, and or edict-clutching, long-dead emissary from Planet 9, buried alive in her airless glass spacecraft, and or resurrected pterodactyl named Our Lady of the Goodbye, who, according to sources close to that ne'er-do-well clout-chasing nightingale and or prickly pear with topaz needles and or oracular honey-scented transsexual nom-de-plumed fleck of God, wrote the New Testament in a single night while snorting a powder made from opals through the tube of a rolled orchid petal, end quote. Which is to say, I once forbade my sentences the very pleasures that hurt so perfectly heartless when I fainted, choking on the silhouette of his cock before waking to see it struck suddenly luminous in a glaze of topaz spit as he slipped it softening from my lips, and the sun broke over the desert. And I'm going to read like a couple paragraphs from a couple books. One of them is The Collected Works of Billy the Kid, which has had a big influence on 7 Come 11, my upcoming book. It is full of poems written by Billy the Kid. It's full of like images. It's so arresting, and it's both like very poetic, but also very jagged. And hard and feels of a piece. It's like it has the qualities of a Western and the pleasures of poetry. So this is just like one section of it. In Boot Hill, there are over 400 graves. It takes the space of 7 acres. There is an elaborate gate, but the path keeps to no main route, for it tangles like branches of a tree among gravestones. 300 of the dead in Boot Hill died violently, 200 by guns, over 50 by knives. Some were pushed under trains, a popular and overlooked form of murder in the West. Some from brain hemorrhages resulting from bar fights, at least 10 killed in barbed wire. In Boot Hill, there are only 2 graves that belong to women, and they are the only known suicides in that graveyard. And then another book that had a major influence on my entire life was Agua Viva by Clarice Lispector, which I read when I was 18 and had a government scholarship to study Chinese in Shanghai, which I then left because I was like, I have to be a writer and transition. It's a work that still means a lot to me. I'm just going to read 2 paragraphs from it. It's a book that's trying to understand what an instant is, basically. But it's not that abstract. She also like smokes cigarettes and puts on her lipstick and stuff. All of me is writing to you, and I feel the taste of being, and the taste of you is as abstract as the instant. I also use my whole body when I paint and set the bodiless upon the canvas, my whole body wrestling with myself. You don't understand music, you hear it, so hear me with your whole body. When you come to read me, you will ask why I don't keep to painting and my exhibitions, since I write so rough and disorderly. It's because now I feel the need for words, and what I'm writing is new to me, because until now my true word has never been touched. The word is my 4th dimension. And then one other paragraph later in the book, she says, as a matter of fact, I don't want to die. I rebel against God. Let's not die as a dare. I'm not going to die, do you hear me, God? I don't have the courage, you hear? Don't kill me, you hear? Because it's a disgrace to be born in order to die without knowing when or where. I'm going to stay very happy, you hear? As a reply, as an insult. I guarantee one thing, we are not guilty. And I have to understand that while I'm alive, you hear, because afterwards it will be too late.
Thank you so much, Aurora. Our next reader will be Imogen Smith, a poet and performer currently living in Los Angeles. Her work has appeared in Based, Folder, The Rumpus, the Poetry Project newsletter, and Tagwork, among other places, as well as in We Want It All, an anthology of radical trans poetics. Imogen was the 2021-2022 Emerge Surface B Fellow at the Poetry Project. She's the author of 2 books of poetry published by Nightboat, Stemmy Things, 2022, which was a finalist for the Leslie Feinberg Award for Trans and Gender Variant Literature, and Raw and Zero, which is forthcoming but available here today. Please welcome Imogen Smith.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Nightboat. Hello, everyone. How are y'all doing this afternoon? Okay. I had a hard time waking up, but it's neither here nor there. I wanted to start with some words that I gave Stephen when I found out that I was going to be on this panel about my work. Maneuvering through my own poetics of writing, research, feeling, research, writing, and editing, I work with an awareness that the poem, being conceived as a living entity, formed of personal histories, culture, politics, ecology, class, and the resources, or lack thereof, underscoring these elements. Like atoms seeking an elemental equation, genre arises out of mundane practice and the will to use language in novel ways. This morning I was thinking about the anti-pastoral pastoral, which I think my work aspires to in its clearest moments. And at the heart of my anti-pastoral pastoral practice is the murk and the muck of life. It is the materiality of our world and the lives that that materiality produces. So I mean, the material world, the elemental world, the sensual world, the violent, politicized world. A cornerstone for me during the writing of Raw and Zero is the work of N.H. Pritchard. And the book is really informed by concrete poetry while not at all being a work of concrete poetry. But to the point of the anti-pastoral pastoral and language, I think Pritchard knew what underlined language and the poem, and therefore gave us language that can be formed and reformed based on the ever-present underlying factors of our lives, arbitrary, structured by power, and otherwise. With that, I'll get to it. Smudge. Movement flutters. What predictability is not. Outside sunlight reigns ambiguous. You can do that with your life. Hope toward nothing but continuance. Flex and reframe. Orbital, the earth and moon. One imagines a nucleus, those centers elude. For everything, an erotic surface. Love it when I lose my place. Today I pick apple mint along the roadside. Despair rattles language, and later, after marking up paper, after twisting stems of calendula, I place my feet in the pond. One day smudges the next, each renewed by darkness. Heartbeats break as doors open wide unto elsewhere. A roundabout, small town, heavy metropolis choked in smoke. Sky orange, burning spruce, lyric sullied, a paucity of beds. No future some can see. Yet witness in friendship the unruliness of entanglement. Who pays upon arrival? Who child of extraction? Who'll loosen, let love hasten? It's beguiling, truth's obvious, the truth incalculable. I write to stay living, read and walk for similar reasons, yearn for uncontainables. Moonlight beyond creek slope, traffic and slow sex, water softening wood. The smudge outlasts us. We tongue and teeth what's holy and cannot be spelt. Thanks. This next one's ridiculous. It's for all my girlies. It's called Imagine Imogen. That's me. Unsure if today begins as I like or as I've chosen, repetition and beat programmed inside that repetition, intercostal muscles between the bars, biting similar bits, durational units of day, architectural blocks mapping my way from digital template to medium of glass and brick, block shift left, block up, right, avert high octane bike lane, look both ways, look both sides now, says Joni. Projections woven through waking, vague reprisals, past decisions echo, echo. The disorientation of reentry into different modes of material being. Coffee twice, cereal and greens, open book, my generous bed, Dodie Bellamy's When the Sick Rule the World, taken a chapter a day, and today it's Rascal Guru. Later, and I should note unrelatedly, I'm naked, it's 1 PM, I squirt lube on my hands and they're out for my ass, and it's strange how the squirt head on the lube bottle shines, but the sides get dusty, dust a weird texture on plastic, hands drawn to it, fingers press, make broad flat tongues, fuck around, find out something, the perineum. It's a forest full of steam murk mystery. You need a hot implement. You need a torch, go counterclock. One hand now tight grip throat, brave new world of my glistening pulling tits and take me. Ignoring what nuance I'm smearing, I'm hell-bent, I'm hey-ho, let's go. The phone a glory hole, an Alexandria of smut. On screen, a doll who can still keep her dick up fucks a femme. It's a cute scenario, not even so salacious. I wanted to fuck you at the party last night, but my slut of a girlfriend fucked you instead. Oh, then why didn't you say so? You need a good fucking, like love my girlfriend, but she ain't gonna fuck you like I fuck you. Hand cinched neck, occupational gagging. There are some people can shtick a whole fist in their maison son. I am hands turned tongue to dildo pipeline. I am as a girl obsessed with squirting. Progesterone gives and gives, sex drive sky high, my cock stays hard, my boobs start dreaming they'll grow old and sag. Just don't boof it, doctor says. Make sure you boof it, 10 of 10 girlfriends advise. Though my moods go chop, darkening waters, look soft but your sandpaper, look sweet, bitter ruth beneath, vibes ancient, all of the earth, and earth takes so long too. I fear my own anger, I don't want to fear anger, and expect this a common malady among people, star turn and stymieing revolution, cloistering opposition to Brando voice, the horror, the horror. I am a writer, I don't want to enact more horror, there is no one thing art is for. She could use an influx of angst, though, like, yeah, I'm quite sensitive, but dig it, I made 41, and how? 44 now. Thanks, me. There was a moment, classic, stoned in LA, Izzy's car, we singing, we toking, we sun. I became aware that my forebears cannot, should not cruise where I am cruising, incapable as they are of honing safer spaces, suburbanite white hands off clip, ditch post-Protestant, bank-derived woo in La Brea, or some tar pit sounding in my skull like a Southern family fake-ass pineapple welcome, you fucking faggot. They take me nowhere and I'm tired of listening. Smoke and mirror bopping along. Don't freeze my tongue. I need it. I speak and. Knowing the ass tastes sweet is revolution. Knowing your own ass tastes sweet kills God, and people need more of that, obviously. A certain kind, we'll say. Pulling the plug a half hour or so later, tip coated with shit, size of a booger or big toe clip, I bring it to my nose, smell myself, take myself back in. It's good to know that one's ass smells sweet, as if I'd popped a fresh bag of soil, savoring a moment the moist before burial, old familiar darkness rich, watered in moonlight as I do, anal mystic transsexual punk goth garden wanting sex witch. The grave is a door, the grave sacred. I want to enter and vacate the grave over and over, make for myself a life of holy dilation, enveloping moments in whatever duration of time my poetics can currently hold. Lazy Friday, Chris sends me a mix, all deep bass kind of psychedelic R&B shit. Immediately lighting candles and disrobe, disarm myself and listen. Reader, no lie. 3 songs in, I was coming the hardest I've come in a year and a half. TBH, I text them, this is the hottest mix anyone's ever made me. Like, I squirted. I fucking squirted. Still got it, I think, and that's a fraught concept that nonetheless brings some relief. The candles, positioned side by side in a threesome, melt into one. Precious image from a soft-ass lesbian poem. I think a lot about how small we are in relation to everything. Look at the sun, now see it's all gas. I reach further, go lower, makes me think slowly, speak slowly, respond carefully, sometimes drag a thought to fray, remember where I'm going, then forget just as fast. I get blasted. I am much of the time blasted, and nobody judge, 'cause get real, nobody. All of us just trying to stay. This one's called, Skip That One. Skip that one. I mean, I guess I wanted to say one more thing about writing poems that try to live in and with the world. I picked up this copy of Hadith today downstairs for free. These are words attributed to the Prophet Muhammad. And just so you know, there are gay, queer, transsexual Muslims. And I opened to this while I was sitting on the stage. If a man who sets out with the intention of performing Hajj meets with his death on the way, he will be granted the rewards by his maker. And I think as a poet, it is my deep honor and pleasure in life to try to pay attention and offer something back for that privilege of attention. This is called the Sidewalk Upshoot. 1. Seeds have sociality. The non-human world teaches multiple variations of labor. Poetics of bulbs and seeds, sloppy kiss of iris, precision of tulip, all of it mathematics. Walking through the garden on Bergen, I practice scansion, make language, spring thinking. All beings collectivize to stay alive. This is the starting point of politics. The city garden is an alchemist, lead, sound, earth, light, a monument to the hatred of landlords. 2. Quote, what drives me is baseless and therefore indisputable. That's Elaine Kahn. I write free New York poetry, am rendered, complex. Written language generates deliberate meditations between objects and self. Perhaps I have a parasocial relationship with humanity and hence nurture crushes, write poems perennially. Dangling carrots of desire facilitate the deep yearning for an eternal way of being that doesn't demise, like call me a generalist, as in one having multiple affiliations of unfinished emergence. Relations without optimism, you might say. Wherever you rest is an edge, weeds in the sidewalk upshoot. 3. Boost the body, the sweetest things still await. Keep Keats' tragedy at arm's length as long as possible. That means don't die. Thank you. I'm a tranny faggot, yes, but I belong to God. Anyway, what do humans know of sacred aberration? Once I listened as Fanny Howe read The Way to Keep Going in Antarctica at St. Mark's Church in the Bowery. Sublimity has touched the surfaces of my life. I'm a constant student of my own desires, facing the realities of the finite universe. Do they need or imply direction? Calendula, mugwort, yarrow, rue. 4. Colonizers are a brutal bunch by definition. Pillage and carry on. A lawn exists to show off ownership of space. A lawn creates the concept of space, as in, look, I don't need to grow anything here. Domestication and further manicure of plants directs them as beings towards an unintuitive individuality. On my feed, watching the genocide of Gaza, the colonization of the West Bank, Kashmir, etc., I understand the suburbs, their reason for existing. make land unlivable, name streets for what's been destroyed. I struggle alongside my friends, my kin, obsessed with survival and the trick of the thing. We are looking for holes, pricks in the fabric, strings to guide vast lengths of impressions, memories, recipes from generations, sweetnesses that won't taste murderous thereafter. 5. Language bears with it the risk of subjugation, turns bodies into narratives subject to lexicons of state, asphalt, wire, even utopia retains a bit of occupation. What if I touch everything? Simone Weil might have called this prayer. Does prayer stem from a desire to feel or know, and why am I convinced there's a difference? Quote, language becomes law when a word holds you in place. Something I read in the Nowadays toilet. The words of my prayers, my desires, my crushes will, alongside my body, be crushed by materiality and time, such as they are. Coda, spring comes and it's raining. Autumn arrives and one clings to fire. Love travels the length of it. I thought the lichen looked cerebral, venous, till touch found it reef-like, nearly bleached beneath my fingers. Maybe people are afraid of stepping over the boundaries of whatever morals have been shoved down the collective throat. But the thing about stepping over something arbitrary or Protestant or what have you is that liberation is on the other side, costing nothing but one's fears, or perhaps everything. Entropy, ecstasy, and the holiness of earth. Presumably, there are many worlds, each retaining their own articulations. That's the Quran. Calendula, mugwort, yarrow, rue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Imogen. Next will be Miranda Mellis, the author of Crocosmia, published by Nightboat in August 2025. Also, the author of Demystifications, The Instead, The Spokes, None of This is Real, and The Revisionist. Miranda has been an artist in residence at the Headland Center for the Arts, the Vermont Studio Center, and Malay Arts. She now teaches at the Evergreen State College. She grew up in San Francisco and lives in Olympia, Washington. Please welcome Miranda Mellis.
Thank you, beautiful Stephen. Thank you, beautiful Nightboat, and hello, everyone. Gosh, amazing readings here. I have the joy and delight that I'm going to have another book with Nightboat after Crocosmia called The Revolutionary, which is the most probably autobiographical of things that I've written. And my kind of organizing principle here is the name, or the proper name, for bringing in some names of lineage. And I was going to read a page from The Revolutionary which concerns names, and then a section from Crocosmia that also has the multivalence or supervalence of naming at its center. So here's Martin Buber. Every name is a step towards the consummate name with a capital N, as everything broken points to the unbroken. And then I'll read from Alfonso Lingus, The Imperative. And these are epigraphs for Crocosmia. The one who emerges does not only call forth unto a system of just laws, but also to a land, a climate, a way of building, a way of rejoicing and feasting, a way of remembering the dead and of dying. And here is Etal Adnan from Premonition. History is made of dreams that either come true or are thrown into the garbage. So this is from a page, it's just like a dirty old page from the manuscript that I'm working on right now. Maybe there's a line in Imogen's poem, utopia also has a bit of occupation in it. I think that's it. I have a note here, I don't know where it's from. Humans seek utopia in order to put an end to their cruelty. But the epigraph here is from Tractatus Wittgenstein. Any combination of states of affairs can actually exist, while the other states of affairs do not exist. Once we went to Albuquerque, or so we were given to believe. Actually, we were in Kentucky. I had an image in my mind of Albuquerque from childhood then that didn't square with geography as I later came to learn it. When I looked back, things did not add up. The desert I had supposedly been to, as I recalled it, was a very green, lush, stormy place with huge weeping willow trees, magnolias, and sassafras, no sage, no cacti, no mesas. My being in Albuquerque was a state of affairs that existed that I was unaware of, while my being in Kentucky was another state of affairs that did not exist, that I was aware of nonetheless as existing. I lived at once in a fabricated and real world. The fabricated world was real for me. The real world was non-existent. The fabricated world was a cover of fabric, and in order for it to be believable, one believed it. I did not pretend to believe it or hope to believe it. I simply believed it. There's a field dedicated to the study of ignorance, agnotology. It is not to be confused with the study of repression, projection, and wishful thinking, which belongs to psychoanalysis. By the time I learned where we really were, I was able to reason well enough, and the explanation made sense to me. I felt no anger or betrayal. I didn't need to know the facts. The fact that my siblings and I were being used for cover when we were too young to consent didn't bother me. It doesn't bother me now either. At the same time, I trace some part of my early psychic disarray to these kinds of things, yet one has no illusions whatsoever that a more normal childhood would have left us better off. In the non-existent state of affairs that was in Albuquerque, I took to be the existent state of affairs, which was in fact a Kentucky I was unaware of. I befriended a toddler named Welcome. Her eyes produced an unusual amount of sleep every day. I cleaned her eyes gently and carefully with a warm washcloth. We all had new names, fake names. Mine was Mirabella, close to my own, with a little bell ringing on the end, a ringing mnemonic, easy for a child to remember if anyone happened to ask. But what do we mean by fake name? I took mine to heart. I was her, while I had her name. And while pretending to be her, what happened to my real name? Haven't we learned from philosophy of language that all names are contingent? For that brief time that I was Mirabella, I did not feel unreal. It is said that children know very well the difference between the imaginary and the make-believe. So now I'm going to read a little bit from Crocosmia. She was named Maya in honor of the prophecy, and after the Vedic term for illusion, and after Vladimir Mayakovsky, her alleged grandfather and tutelary spirit. The name told the child everything about who she was, where she was. Each Maya within the proper name Maya encountered another Maya that had nothing to do with the other. Yet something occurred between the three that didn't occur within any one of the Mayas, a conversation outside and between each one of them, just as she had lived outside and between other lives, in the strewn condition of the flying root, thrown, seeking, and never finding home. She sat by herself at a cooperative cafe, situated on an airy observation deck that encircled the enormous central stem of a giant 700-meter-high crocosmia flower, its red, rain-glistened petals arcing overhead. The conical architecture reminded her of the old world's air traffic control towers. The rain had just stopped, and angled sun rays lit gossamer dispersing clouds. Densely layered gardens spread out below. Monkeys, goats, foxes, bison, and elk meandered among palisades, between earthworks and ceremonial complexes. Nests, roosts, perches, and rookeries dotted the flowering tower, where the myriad birds of many sizes and colors gossiped eagerly, staring pensively, interrupting each other. The passage she was just now reading from Vladimir Mayakovsky's How Are Verses Made was apt for the view. And this is Mayakovsky. A change of plane from that in which an action or fact is situated, a certain distance is indispensable. You have to stand back at a distance equal to 3 times the size of the object. If you don't do that, you simply won't see the thing you're depicting. The bigger the thing or the event, the further you have to get away from it. He was speaking about the distance needed to perceive and depict one's time and place clearly. He enjoined the poet to take distance from their poems, which also applied to the art of revolution. Distance made the difference, even just a hair's breadth. A moth wing, a changing plane tilts the scales. Distance, Maya thought. It seems like a solution, but then it becomes a problem. Too far away and you want to get close again. Now the distance might be untraversable. You might not find a way back, like one of those dreams of trying and failing to get somewhere, one obstacle after another in the way, space itself deflecting you, something you can't stop falling out of. She had had many dreams of endlessly departing, never arriving. It was always her mother, Jane, she was trying to get back to. There she was, her long white hair in a ponytail, her backpack sitting on the ground next to her chair, reflected in the double-paned passive solar windows and open to the cooler air of the lower troposphere. She didn't recognize herself in the reflection. The face in the glass portrayed solidity, whereas the inside feel was fluid. She squeezed lemon into her glass and smiled at the water glinting in the light. Water! Lines from an old poem came to mind. Of all the words they've used for water, starlight was the first. Water, soft as breath, water above, clear and delicious, water below, millions of years old, thousands of feet underground. It had the texture of maple sap and turned orange when exposed to oxygen. No one would have predicted in her childhood that as before the industrialization of the elements, they would be able to rely once again on water's abundance. By the time she was born, human beings had taken so much groundwater that the very axis of the earth had been altered. Now good water flowed once more through the winding arteries of the living earth. The crocosmia above was another miracle. Under open sky, the sheer redness of their enormous petals gave shade to hillside dwellings below and cured ailments. Although knowing their provenance as no one else could, Maya reveled in their spectacular largeness and welcomed their largesse. Each of the 7 regions where these and other enormous flowers appeared had an interpretive center underneath so people could both visit and study them, their petals flying like so many red banners. This was her first time seeing them, though they had appeared long ago when her mother had disappeared. As she had countless times before, for the waking mind repeats itself, the sleeping one tries new things. While colonial grids were dismantled, called down to earth and reparation, and whale pods took back their oceans, she wondered where Jane was. She looked out over the plains and read from her guidebook. In the cosmogony of this emergent world, a recovering world, a remediating world, the crocosmia with its red plumage is among the guardians. The crocosmia, a revolutionary who stands for the many as one, arranges itself in a convivial cluster on a floral axis. The pattern of their arising represents renewal, earth faith, and the redemption of red. Maya had taken a funicular to the observation deck, where one could admire the grandeur of the flaming crests from a floating open-air cafe designed by means of biomimicry to grow skyward along with the inflorescence. Like all the architecture of the period, the built environment was temperate, cool when it was hot, warm when it was cold, notwithstanding the ongoingly kaleidoscopic climate, instead of summer, fall, winter, and spring, drought, fire, hurricane, and flood, instead of seasons, collage, instead of rhythmic cycles, erratic fragments, the changing climate made of life one sudden moment after another. Contexts collapsed, everything was suddenly. She observed the co-workers who stewarded the place, cleaning, cooking, resting, talking. The construction and maintenance of the structure, the guidebook said, was a technical matter as well as an ethical one. Technique and ethics are inseparable. She read on and to her surprise saw a name she recognized, someone her mother had studied with. In the 21st century, physicist and feminist philosopher Dr. Karen Barad taught that matter is striated with ethics. This insight gave the basis for a climate model which would no longer be solely predictive but also constructive. A climate model that coalesced into a single shimmering crystal of infinitely changing emergences and dynamics, best symbolized by the Vedic concept of Indra's net. The most accurate map of the world, as Borges had written, was the world itself. The guidebook went on to describe how the building, both a noun and a verb, was alive, adaptive, absorbed heat, metabolized waste, generated water and food. To address the pathologies of infrastructure, the time had come for builders to become clairvoyants, for architects, seers, and farmers to collaborate, pin their sails together, relearn how to live reciprocally within medicinal dwellings capable of change and of learning. The blueprint for building as healthcare consisted of a question: what agencies and services are missing? Maya's own dwelling place, a bungalow in the forest, had originally been built modularly, quickly, and on the cheap, without eternity in mind, let alone climate change. For as long as she had lived there, it had been coming loose at the seams, being unmade by thick rains, heavy and streaming. It was being overwritten by weather, seeded generations ago. Like me, she thought, like anybody, inexorably it falls, a slow self-demolition. The first time she realized it was shifting, she'd been sleeping. She woke to an unusual ringing patter. In the morning she saw it, a cleft under a corner of the foundation. The rain struck a length of newly exposed pipe, the source of the sound. She walked around the house and wondered how to prevent it from sliding right off its foundation into the nearby ravine, which was to be avoided for obvious reasons, as well as one reason that wasn't obvious. Maya knew the obvious is rarely truly obvious. Even the uncanny equations she had once studied with her mother that show our universe has the properties of a hologram were spoken of in the non-mood of obviousness. The closer you look, the stranger the obvious is. For instance, the seawater and stardust in our bodies, our scapula like the wings of seabirds, our backs fluid and bony like a rocky creek along which time has braided a spine. Yes, that things are not obvious is obvious, Maya knew. Even the obvious reason that she should prevent the house from sliding into the ravine wasn't obvious to her. Why shouldn't it go the way of all things? Except there was a small cemetery down there, although no one had been buried in it for generations. Nor had Maya ever seen anyone walking there. Like a nurse on a hospital floor in the middle of the night, she, a stranger, tended the ancestral graves, decayed over time until they were almost indistinguishable from the microbial earth, the unsanctimonious land. She alone sat at these few graves, garlanded with rusty metal pendants, desiccated bouquets dissolved on touch, left many decades ago by people whose descendants didn't know about them, not even of their non-existence. Gray headstones, smaller ones for infants with tattering pinwheels, the rusty, brittle scrape of an ancient wind chime, photographs once sealed into the headstones, now effaced, ambiguous, anamorphic, and fungal. Death is an abstract expressionist, Maya thought, who paints forgetfulness. To be forgotten, to be unknown, is to be abstract, a whirl of grain. Maybe all abstraction is this, the imageless image of what goes unremembered, unknown, a form changed beyond recognition. Thank you.
Thank you, Mirabella. And our final reader will be the wonderful Mónica De La Torre, poet, translator, scholar, born and raised in Mexico City, author of 2 books from Nightboat, Pause the Document, and Repetition 19, also The Happy End, All Welcome, Public Domain, and talk shows. She has edited Bomb Magazine and the Brooklyn Rail and received fellowships from the Foundation for Contemporary Art and Creative Capital. She now teaches poetry and translation at Brooklyn College. Please welcome Mónica De La Torre to the stage.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Thank you for being here. It's great to warm up this room with your incredible writing. I'm going to also just begin by reading something that I shared with Stephen about genre. And it's in regards to my book, Pause the Document, which came out last year, at this time, actually. It's easy to forget the paralyzing uncertainty of the early days of the pandemic and the way it manifested in public discourse. Instead of speaking of a shutdown initially, we were to enter a brief, benevolent pause. The multiple stop-start cycles that followed over the course of the next 3 years overlapped with personal and political crises that kept necessitating that unfolding situations be reevaluated. If poetry prolongs meaning, then this period of looping temporalities and radical discontinuity was ripe to summon its transformative powers. Let's see. When I started writing Pause the Document, I thought I'd write documentary poems tracking shifts in my own and the public's attention. But as everything was pivoting, I followed suit and became more interested in focusing on what poetry captures best: intangible dreamscapes, moods, the life of the mind, and what Ashbery called the experience of experience. It didn't surprise me that, in the end, the poems in the book are all renegotiating genre. They reference modes ranging from the lyrical to the pastoral, and from the surrealistic to the notational, and even include a piece of poets' theater. Alejandra Pizarnik's poems, Lisa Robertson's Cinema of the Present, Kenneth Koch's avant-garde plays, and Merce Cunningham's Changes notes on choreography provided precious tutelage and license while writing and assembling the book. So I'll give you a little, I was listening to this amazing radio show the other day where they played a ton of Bad Bunny songs, and then they played the songs that he was sampling from. So I'm gonna do a little bit of that here. Of course, I'm not Bad Bunny, but he does appear in the poems, and it's really fun. So Changes, Notes on Choreography by Merce Cunningham is a book that was published by Song Cave, and I took a lot of language from these notes on choreography to sort of animate the poems and convey the fact that they were invested in the process of thinking about generating poetry, mapping our very constrained movements at the time, our interactions with others, our interactions with our environment, and just like focusing on the transformation of everyday life into art is something that really is consistent with his work. So, for instance, here's a notes on a choreography from 1944 called Root of an Unfocus. The dance was concerned with fear. It began in conscious awareness of something outside the individual, and after its passage in time, ended in the person crawling out of light. The time structure allowed for this in a way that I felt more conventional structures, i.e. theme and variations, ABA, would not. So this idea of crawling out of the light, we were all in the dark then, and I would say that if this presentation had a title, it would be Writing in the Dark, and you'll see, I'll read a poem about that in a second. Here is something else that he writes about that I find super helpful. The danger with acquiring a technique is that it can constrict, can make you think that's the way you have to do it. The lively part of it can be if it makes the way you would naturally dance more natural and extends what fits you. And lastly, here we go. Mannerism is an excuse or lack of vision. Style is the dancer's being appearing through the dance. I find it so beautiful that you could replace this with poetry, and you could have style is the poet's being appearing in the poem. So I have a poem that's written in the dark. It's called Not Against the Rules. It hailed golf balls back in June. Notebook got nicked, got soaked. What month is it? She speaks of grief so gracefully, you hold on to her words, lest you miss it's gnawing at you too. Daily broadcasts of an unimaginable assortment of newly weaponized subjects. Fragments of him were residue. Countertext. I am writing in the dark, and that is what the noise is about. Triple turn and skip. That's straight out of that book, the Merce Cunningham. Triple turn and skip. Es marzo, marzo es marcha, es amarse, es Marte de la guerra Dios, amarte, es amarte y es marcha, marchan los días y la lucha, sí, La lucha sigue, sí. Hay círculos que nunca se cierran, círculos que se cierran, círculos que se cierran, círculos que nunca se cierran. Hay círculos, círculos y círculos, semicírculos o circunferencias incompletas. Hay círculos que son ondas en lo menos hondo de las superficies líquidas, que son olas y círculos que son ondas sonoras, círculos sonidos que son idos o son nidos. Hay círculos que son nidos y hay círculos que son idos, continuándose en círculo, en espiral. Los círculos nunca se cierran, continuándose en círculo, en espiral, los círculos. So that poem is about the recurrence of March and how March started, we had the original March of 2019, or no, 2020, and then on top of that, 2021, 2022, 2023. And I feel like the title points to that circularity, and of course, turns the poem into a performance, so to speak, where the words themselves are dancing on the page, and they break up and generate other words. And so the word, for instance, sonido, sound, becomes nest, son, and also sonidos, sounds that have departed. And it points to that fleeting quality of thought and existence, and the poem existing in time. So, another avenue into temporality, actualizing the poem through an attention to ritual and performance, came to me through the work of Kenneth Koch. Kenneth Koch wrote avant-garde plays that are basically on the page, not meant to be staged. I'm going to read you one of them, and then I'm going to read you a play of mine in the book. This is Kenneth Koch. Permanently. Oh, please, if I don't put my face in front of the mic, it's fine, right? I don't need to lean in. Okay, there we go. Much better. This play by Kenneth Koch is called Permanently. There is an atmosphere of grammar and elementary school. The scene is a city sidewalk and street. In the first part of the play, the doings of the adjective and the nouns are acted out on one part of the stage, while on another, the parents and children watch and make comments. Man. The nouns are clustered in the street. Woman. An adjective walks past. Child. Oh, she kisses the nouns. Man. The principal will be in a rage. Woman. Look, here he comes. He is indeed a tower. The principal totters in. Principal. Adjective. Nouns. Get back in the textbook. Otherwise, we won't include you in the next book. Woman. But the nouns are struck, moved, changed. Man. I think they've fallen in love with the adjective. In any event, they say, you can't write a book of any kind without us, at least of any size, so go away. Give us our liberty today. We've seen an adjective, and all for us is changed. The principal hobbles off. Child. Oh, look, the principal is hobbling away. Defeat is in his look. Maybe he will be cheered up by the cook. Darkness, dawn, morning light. It's the next day. Verb drives up in his car. Verb. I am a verb. My car is at the curb, and I am driving away. Adjective and nouns, jump in. Adjectives and nouns get in the car. Other parts of speech run on stage. Other parts of speech, oh, take us too. They get in. The car drives off slowly. Man, they've created the sentence. Come, let's read what it says. Behind the verb's car flutters a big paper pennant with these words on it. You have enchanted me with a single kiss, which can never be undone until the destruction of language. So my piece is called, it's a closet drama. And again, keep in mind that it was written at the height of the pandemic. Ceiling, looking down at person on the floor. Why are you playing corpse? Walls, to each other. She stares at us interchangeably when she tires of glaring at the hopelessly pathetic advertising across the street. Ceiling to windows. Illegible from this vantage. What is it? Windows. Live well, forge ahead, a state of mind, a way of life. Column, plus details about available square footage. Corner 1. I'm fortunate to be spared such sight. Last thing I need right now is motivation from real estate developers. Windows to all corners. Say that to your angling of shadows. Corner 2. All I ever see outside are stacks of windows across the street and scaffolding coming down at a painfully slow rate at glacial speed. Column, a New York point of view. Person, glacial? You need an idiom upgrade, guys. At the rate glaciers are melting, you would have seen the scaffolding come down way before the contagion began. No part of the room wants to hear their passé. Cabin feverish themselves, they become more animated when hearing Bad Bunny from a passing car's booming sound system. Corner 3, to person. Why don't you replay your temporary savior complex instead of getting on our case? Walls. Besides doodles, the papers on the table contain notes on hypervigilance and the displacement of experience. Column, twisting. What is it? Outside looking in, inside looking out? Outside looking down, inside looking up? Ceiling to person. Let me repeat the question. Why are you playing corpse? Person, chanting. These days, walks are my cinema verite. I socialize in my dreams. I climb the social ladder up and down in my dreams. Dreams are my nightmare. Dreams are my social nightmare, my cinema verite. Walks are my party, my cinema verite. Namaste. Floorboards in unison. She was a visitor, quote, unquote. So to end, I'll end with some dreams, just a couple of dreams, where the poet, the Argentine surrealist poet, Alejandra Pizarnik, made her way into a dream of mine. Do we want to hear the only recording of Alejandra Pizarnik's voice? Yes, okay. Does that work? There we go. My apologies. Look it up. It's called Escrito con un nictógrafo. Written with a nictograph. It's a poem by another Argentinian poet called Arturo Carrera. And the nictograph is an invention of Lewis Carroll's so that he would record notes of his dreams and whatever thoughts he had in the middle of the night without having to turn on the light or get up. So I'll just read you the one poem, two poems, very brief, prose poems actually, based on Alejandra Pizarnik, who made her way into the dreams and the poems. I repeat the poem in Spanish a number of times so I can transcribe it upon waking. It's so simple I can't possibly forget it. Later, a search takes me to the sole extant recording of Alejandra Pizarnik's voice. She reads a poem by Arturo Carrera, whose title translates to written with a nictograph. El escriba ha desaparecido. The scribe has disappeared. The phrase future historian of feelings in another notebook. El poema se abre, remembering sediments. Esa es tu fuerza. Only a translator might be able to decode them according to the cathartic method. I am given a book of hers wrapped in craft paper. No trace of the poem, just a password in gift form. My void is called my sister, said the voice I didn't have. Morning thoughts with the consistency of music. A sustained undoneness. Confession distorted as in translation. Ions, eons, and other easily confused words. Reduplication or the erotics of indeterminateness, rendered as a series of folds. In a single sentence, such as, synapses are plastic. Me pierdo en el tiempo. A day's third devoted to shedding dead cells. Analysis, all memory. Other instances include, the more a patch of grass is trampled, the clearer the path becomes. A memory of walking is being created. Also, wing-ding, flim-flam, back to back. When asked what transpired, she heard herself blurt out, I am not a revenant. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica, and one more huge round of applause for our readers, Aurora Mattia, Imogen Smith, Miranda Mellis, and Mónica De La Torre. Thank you so much. They'll be signing books in the hallway. Thank you for being here. Have a great afternoon.